Mario Luigi, a series full of unique and exciting worlds, emotional, character-driven stories, and innovative action-packed gameplay, has been dead for half a decade. But out of nowhere, it was announced that a new entry would be released for the Nintendo Switch. As the first home console entry in a series of beloved handheld exclusives, did this game live up to its predecessors? Short answer, yes. Long answer, yes. But it's complicated, and that's what we're talking about today. This is Mario and Luigi Brothership. Let's set the stage for this game. The story starts off as Mushroom Kingdom's best, most wholesome bros get brutally sucked into a wormhole where they see visions of an alternate reality being ripped apart and its inhabitants isolated as they're scattered across various parts of the ocean. The brothers get separated during the jump, and when Mario comes to, he is all alone in a strange new world. Mario hallucinates visions of his brother that, when followed, lead him to a ship-shaped island, appropriately named Ship-Shaped Island. There, the bros reunite and team up with cute little Not-a-Pig Snoutlet and Connie, keeper of the Unitree, to find and reconnect all these scattered islands and bring peace and unity back to Concordia. So yeah, that sets up the main plotline of Brothership. It is a beautiful story about the bonds and connections between people. A theme that can of course be seen in the designs of many characters and enemies throughout the game. I've noticed many people quick to fault Brothership's story for being basic or predictable. And yes, while this game's complexity is nowhere near that of some JRPG epics like Final Fantasy or maybe even Xenoblade, I don't think that's a bad thing. This is a Mario game. It's supposed to be a fun, happy-go-lucky adventure, but even still, I feel the high stakes and emotion throughout the game, and it definitely lives up to its predecessors. 2 points where I think Brothership goes even above and beyond its predecessors are side quests and branching story paths. Throughout the game, multiple side quests appear, and not only do these give pretty good rewards, many of them, including a handful of limited time quests, give you extra world and character building moments that make you care that much more about these people and their stories. On the other hand, branching story paths are more of a feature meant to enhance your story. There are multiple parts of the game that allow you to pick and choose which path you want to follow, and your decisions make the game just a little bit more unique and personal. Now, every option does lead to a similar outcome, but the way you get to that outcome changes, along with things like which islands you explore, or what characters you interact with, or even how difficult the next dungeon is. There are also a few decisions that make permanent changes to the adventure, like very early on when you have to recruit only one of either super cool accessory girl make it, or super cringe glove guy build it. Once you make that choice, you have to sail to and complete the missions on their respective islands. And here is where we should start going more in-depth about islands, as they are an integral part of Brothership's gameplay. Brothership throws away the old world design of previous Mario & Luigi games in favor of islands, which kind of completely changes the way you play. All the islands in Concordia are of course connected through the overarching story of the game, but at the same time they feel sort of disconnected from each other. They all have their own mini story arcs that are almost completely self-contained from the outside world. I would honestly compare Brothership's design to a game like Mario Sunshine. You have your hub area, Delfino Plaza, and Ship-Shape Island, and from there you enter different worlds, each of which kind of just do their own thing. And that is very different from a very linear, very focused RPG like Superstar Saga. The game design does complement the short, bursty, sort of grab-and-go playstyle that the Switch kind of thrives on. This new design does, however, kind of clash with other parts of the game, specifically the length of the story. This game is long, around 35 plus hours for full completion. Not a long game by RPG standards, but you can imagine playing this game for maybe an hour a day, and it taking over a month to complete. Then you get into a scenario where maybe you get detached from the true objective after doing side quests for too long, or what seems to be most people's complaint, the game telling you what to do too often, which, to be fair, is an exaggerated criticism, especially compared to the previous Mario & Luigi games, even the good ones, where Starlo does the exact same thing, but also bullies Luigi while she does it. I think this game would have done better to full commit to being this grand JRPG experience, because in my experience, the game made me want to keep going from one main event to the next, and so on, but I also played for like 5 hours a day. I didn't have time to almost lose interest in the main story since I was blazing through it. I can see people doing one of the minor islands or side quests and feeling a bit detached from the story, but I just want to give this game the benefit of the doubt, since it's sort of a transitional game in the series, going from handheld to home console, being the first game after the bankruptcy of Alpha Dream, and being the first original game from the series in over a decade. There are so many things this game does well, or even the best out of the entire series, and I want to focus on those next. The characters in this game are the best, and if you don't agree with me, f*** you! Brothership has the whole plugs and outlets theme going on, but it doesn't really feel like a gimmick. Take a game like Origami King and look at the Legion of Stationery, for example. Color pencils, tape, stapler. Of course these designs are gimmicks, not even based on stationery. They are literally stationary, but they are also nothing more. Everything about them is that they are a stapler or some tape, whereas Brothership's characters are actual characters regardless of how they look. Take the main antagonist, Zocket and the Extension Corps. Yeah, these guys are themed after a bunch of plugs, but you'll never hear them say, "I'm about to pass the aux on you," or "take my video graphics array beam," although those are some fire lines. These guys are both menacing and funny and some of the best fights in the entire series. If you want to talk about good guys, they are also some of my favorites in the entire series. We of course have Snoutlet, my favorite companion. He's awesome and cute and sounds like Kirby. Now some people hate on him for being almost like Navi and holding your hand throughout the game, but that's just wrong. This is the first Mario & Luigi game that basically doesn't have tutorials. All the how-tos have been turned into a few skippable text panels that tell you, if you need more help, go look at the menu. And that's it. You're free to do things by yourself, and you're never taken out of the action. And while Snoutlet's there to be your game guide, he's actually fun to hang out with, and can actually help you without bullying Luigi every chance he gets, like a certain someone I know. Some of your other companions, like Connie, Ark, a group of young heroes named Idol, and Buddy, the best character ever, are similarly important to the story and help you throughout the game. They all have their own goals and feel like actual supporting characters, highlighted even more if you complete their own unique side quests. Even when they're not playing a role in the current events, just seeing them walk around Ship-Shape Island is super cute. The amazing graphics, the cutesy designs, and little quirks help these characters look and feel like characters. They are so much more than mindless NPCs, especially when compared to some of the previous games in the series. Speaking of the previous games, we do get to see some of our old friends return. Peach was made into an actual good character, something that most games struggle to do. Starlo, I think, is also at her best in this game, and while she does take a more supporting role staying with Peach, the two work together and are actually proactive in helping the bros defeat the bad guys, rather than being unthinking damsels in distress. Now we can't talk about a Mario & Luigi game without talking about the big baddie himself. Bowser is back, baby, and just like the other returning characters, he's at his best. You get to see more of him and his dynamic with the bros, the princess, and all of his minions, a la Bowser's Inside Story. He is hilarious and kinda just a cool guy, while still being a strong and menacing antagonist, and he performs that role as an antagonist better than any other game in the series. In previous Mario & Luigi games, Bowser has kinda just been tacked on at the very end. He's either just a pawn in the villain's last stand, or will straight up steal the main antagonist's thunder. But in Brothership, both antagonists coexist pretty perfectly. Bowser is still able to shine without completely stealing the show. Now the game's entire cast is great, but we are still yet to talk about one character. A certain hat and overall wearing, mustachioed gentleman who is arguably the best and greatest and most important character in Nintendo history. It is time to talk about... Yes, Luigi. He's the best, and he gets even better in Brothership. Luigi has always been just a player too when it comes to the Mario series as a whole, but Mario RPGs, and specifically Mario & Luigi games, are where he gets to shine the most. There is a whole history of how Mario & Luigi games helped create the character of Luigi as we all know today, that I won't go into. But TLDR is Luigi is awesome, especially in this series. So how does this game highlight Luigi's character and stand out from the previous games, especially after Dream Team, which went way more in depth to Luigi's character than any game before it. Well, Brothership kicks off from where Dream Team ended. Luigi starts this game literally saving Mario's life. Without Luigi, it's already game over. He is the problem solver when we get stuck and don't know what to do. He is more cool and confident than ever before, and gets more so as the story goes on. He's got me out here like Piccolo and Gohan during the Boo Saga. Luigi is just great, especially when he doesn't have a character following him around talking shit the whole game. There is, however, a problem with Luigi. They're actually this game's biggest criticisms, believe it or not, but I definitely do think the amount of hate this game gets from these criticisms is a little extreme, so I want to not defend them, but at least give a more moderate point of view of this controversy. Number 1. What happened to the B button? Luigi no longer uses the B button to pick his attacks, and when people found this out, they went crazy. You still time attacks with the B button, but now you have to press A to menu. So sure, this is lame. Every game in the series has used A for Mario and B for Luigi. It was well established, unique, and fun, and intuitive, and low-key kind of innovative. There was no real reason to change it, other than maybe because every other game in Nintendo's library uses A for confirm and B for cancel, so maybe they just wanted to keep it uniform or didn't want to confuse people. Like I said, you still fight with B. It's still a Mario and Luigi game, but let's be real, they probably should not have changed it. Overall though, not a big deal. Number 2, they killed Luigi. Is it control? Back in the day, you would again control Luigi with the B button on the overworld. Now, he instead automatically follows and platforms behind you, including during some puzzle segments. So, I understand the sentiment. It would suck if this were a 2-player game that suddenly stopped functioning as such, but that's not actually what happened here. I don't think some fans really understand what has actually been changed with Luigi. People act as if a major part of the Mario and Luigi games was that you could literally switch control between Mario and Luigi, but that's not actually true for any games besides Superstar Saga. In every game after Superstar Saga, you would continuously lose more and more control over Luigi until really all he could do was jump. By the time you get to the 3DS games, Luigi could no longer freely lead the party, all of your bros moves were assigned to their own buttons, and even the Superstar Saga remake removed Luigi's control from the original game. People seem to praise Mario and Luigi as a sort of 2-playable character game, but they don't realize that only Superstar Saga actually lets you play as Luigi and Mario, instead of Mario plus 1. Now the Superstar Saga nostalgia is extra bad since Superstar Saga is the only game currently available to play on the modern console. This is something I feel was never brought up in the past, mostly because those games always kept the bare minimum of Luigi at least being able to jump, and also get backshotted by random enemies. But now that Luigi has fully transformed into what is essentially a Pikmin, it is very noticeable. I do, however, still think it works well and is honestly a bit of an improvement from some of the previous games. Using Dream Team and Paper Jam as examples, I don't think the bros' movement translated very well to the 3D environment. Platforming was often annoying with 2 or 3 bros, especially if you were dashing. Managing the overworld actions wasn't very fluid at all, and extra clunky, especially compared to Superstar Saga, that again had the GOAT controls. I think having Luigi on follow was just an easy way to prevent any platforming from being annoying in the future. There are some people that try to argue Luigi is actively hindering your progress with exploration or puzzles, but I think this is just kinda ridiculous. The biggest example of this is from the IGN review, where they pretend that Luigi is on a quest to ruin this floor panel puzzle, but what they don't tell you is that Luigi actually waits like 5 seconds for you to do anything before moving, and the only way you can fail this is if you don't do anything. The only reason this footage exists is because IGN cut out themselves sitting on the wrong panel doing nothing until Luigi started moving. And whether or not you think this is actually a problem, that right there was just disingenuous. It's literally just a timer puzzle, and just because there's no clock on screen, it doesn't make this puzzle some competition against some imaginary badly designed Luigi. I really wanted to put my own footage of this puzzle in, but I cannot find this 10-second clip among my 40 hours of footage, and didn't want to show footage of another puzzle in case it would spoil one of the later locations. But trust me, if you play this game, you will not have trouble. I was somehow gonna connect this part with the next section, but that kind of disingenuous hate just kind of made me too angry to come up with a decent lead-in. So here we go. At this point, we can finally talk about the battle system. Battles are fast-paced, something that I really haven't seen since the early days of the series. This game's crop of bros attacks all look amazing, feel amazing, and even have new Final Smash finishers. The new battle plugs are the best secondary battle mechanic in the entire series, and I do mean the best. The ability to change between multiple different plugs at the drop of a dime. Over 40 unique plugs that are legitimately all useful throughout the entire game. Look at some of these effects that I'm putting on screen. They're all really good, and they get even better when you mix and match for even stronger combo effects. Give your next attack that extra juice, shield yourself from the next big hit, automatically heal yourself without wasting a turn, or you can do a combination of all three. Boss battles in particular are the biggest highlights of the game. They are easily the best paced battles in the entire series, long enough to utilize all your strategies without dragging on for too long. They also introduced new Luigi logic moves that give boss battles some extra heat. And with all of these new additions, the combat in Brothership is more than just a return to form. When fully realized, I do think the battle system is the deepest and honestly most fun in the entire series. There is, however, one small issue. Like I said, when fully realized, the battles in this game are great, but it does take a seemingly long time to reach that greatness. Admittedly, the early game does take a little while to pick up, and by no means do I think the game ever got boring or was slow, but by the time I was level 7 and had completed multiple islands and story quests, I noticed that I don't have a single bros attack yet. I just beat the first major boss only using jump and hammer. And again, I never felt bored with the game. I was always doing something productive and rewarding and advancing the story. And I did get bros attacks right after I had this thought. But I do have to acknowledge the valid criticism of the early game. I do, however, also feel the need to defend this game, because depending on when you watch this video, you may or may not know that this game has had a very controversial release. Let's get into it. Whether you are watching this a week from now or years into the future, I think the context surrounding this game's release is important in understanding not only the different opinions of this game, but also the trajectory of the entire series going forward. So there was a lot of discourse surrounding Brothership on release, due to many mixed reviews. Different sites were dropping 6, 7s, 8s, 9s, which are generally positive scores. There were, however, a handful of lackluster reviews, most notoriously IGN, who gave it a 5 out of 10. Now, technically speaking, a 5 out of 10 is not a bad score. It is a mid score. But let's be clear. I do not think IGN's scoring system accurately represents the numbers they hand out, nor do I think the IGN reviewer actually believes the game is a 5 out of 10 based on his own words. I'm gonna read you an excerpt from IGN's review guide, which they base their scoring system on. This excerpt has also been quoted by Logan Plant, the actual IGN Brothership reviewer, when he reaffirmed his stance on the game. 5 out of 10. Mediocre. This is the kind of bland, unremarkable game we've mostly forgotten about a day after we finish playing. A mediocre game isn't something you should spend your time or money on if you consider either to be precious, but they'll pass the time if you have nothing better to do. Now, saying a game is unremarkable, sure, that can sound like a 5 out of 10, but saying a game is a complete waste of time and you should not buy it means the game is bad. And that's how the public took these mediocre scores. So of course, there was a lot of discourse and honestly a lot of bandwagoning surrounding the game. Luckily, fast forward to a week after release, and I'm happy to see a decent turnaround. I and many other players have noticed that a decent amount of criticisms against Brothership are just kinda wrong. And I'm not trying to knock anyone else's opinions, but some of the most frequent criticisms I hear can honestly be boiled down to extreme nitpicking, unfair comparisons, or in the absolute worst case, just straight up lies. For example, the very first criticism of the IGN review is navigating the ocean current sucks. A great criticism, one that I actually agree with. The current map itself is a bit slow and clunky, but you don't really do much with it in terms of gameplay. You just set where you want to go, then you do other things while the ship is traveling in the background. At best, you don't really mind it, and at worst, it's a little bit annoying. The issue with the IGN review is that it immediately makes the comparison to the Great Sea from Zelda the Wind Waker. It takes Wind Waker's sort of open world sailing mechanic and tries to compare it to the current chart in Brothership, and it just doesn't make sense to do so. The sailing between and discovering new islands is a major part of Wind Waker's story and gameplay. Meanwhile, Brothership's story and gameplay is very much contained on the islands themselves. The travel between said islands is almost inconsequential, and that idea is furthered by the game itself actually encouraging you to queue up sailing in the background while you do other objectives. Overall, I don't really want to argue whether or not Brothership and its map are better than one of the greatest games of all time, since it's just an unfair comparison. I do, however, have to point out that the failure to make the distinction between Brothership's mechanics and Wind Waker's in this example comes across, again, just a little bit disingenuous, especially when there are multiple forms of fast travel introduced throughout the game. Now here comes the part where I say, I don't want to rag on Logan specifically, but I just don't think he and many of the game's critics were ready to give Brothership a fair chance, and I think I know why. The last decade has not been kind to the series. Multiple games with mixed reviews, 2 lackluster remakes, and a continuous decline in sales between every single release, ultimately leading to the lowest selling Mario game of all time. Finally, what little hope the series has left was snuffed out when series developer Alpha Dream went bankrupt in 2019. Mario and Luigi were dead. To make things worse, the other Mario RPGs weren't doing much better. Sure, Paper Mario Origami King released in July 2020, but that was the third time Paper Mario sort of failed to change its formula, and don't even get me started on SMRPG. There hasn't been a single peep from the series since... oh my god. November 17th, 2023, Super Mario RPG, one of the greatest games of all time, is re-released for the Nintendo Switch. Next thing you know, May 23rd, 2024, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, one of the greatest games of all time, is re-released for the Nintendo Switch. And 3 weeks later, Mario & Luigi Brothership is announced. So yeah, after the release of multiple masterpiece games that successfully revived 2 out of 3 beloved series, Mario & Luigi Brothership had some pretty big shoes to fill. Not to mention the added pressure of having to transition the series from handheld games to the first full-length home console RPG. I am sure that there are so many people who knock Brothership a few extra points just for the reasons that it's not as good as T2ID, or it's too different from T2ID. And I'm not gonna hold you, Brothership is not as good as T2ID. Again, one of the greatest games of all time. But what does that even matter? This idea that you should just play T2ID instead is lame and cringe, and if you don't believe that people are saying this, go look at any number of Brothership reviews and count how many of them mention that T2ID is better. That way of thinking is blinding some people to the greatness of this game. And sure, it has its flaws, but still, it's a unique entry in the series, solves so many past problems, and is a great first step for the future of the series on home console. Both a return to form and revival for Mario and Luigi. Final score for this game is good. And with that, I have covered every original Mario & Luigi game except for one. So let me know if you are standing Brothership like I am, or if I'm just coping and IGN was right the whole time. And stay tuned for next video, where we finally talk about the game that started it all.